In the eyes of Willow Liu, the beloved princess of the Liu family, I was hopelessly in love with her. During our senior year of high school, she dove headfirst into a rebellious phase and started spending a lot of time with a school delinquent named Makoto. To match her taste, I even dyed my hair the same bright green color and bought a flashy Kawasaki motorcycle. I took her speeding through the city streets, living out every teenage fantasy she could imagine. George, what the hell? You're copying me on purpose. When Makoto saw that I dyed my hair too, not only stealing his spotlight but also pulling Willow's attention away from him, he pointed at me furiously, shouting loud enough to shake the building. After all, we might both have looked like rebels, but I was riding a Kawasaki worth tens of thousands of dollars, while he was riding a beat-up second-hand bike that barely cost a few hundred. We weren't even playing in the same league. Chapter 1. Makoto's whole wannabe bad boy image was completely crushed by a newbie rebel like me. I know you like Willow too, but I'm the one she likes. As usual, Makoto steered the conversation back to Willow, his voice dripping with confidence. Don't think copying me is going to help you date her. She'll never like you. We were standing in the restroom at the time. I was minding my own business at the urinal while Makoto buzzed around me like an annoying fly. Finally fed up, I smirked and shot back. Last time I checked, chasing a girl was a competition. Then I added casually, oh, by the way, you keep saying Willow likes you. Funny how I've never heard her mention that. I paused. If she really likes you, why haven't you two made it official online? You. Makoto instantly choked on his own words, his face turning bright red. Despite his tough guy reputation, he didn't dare lay a hand on me. After all, I lived with the Liu family and rode to school with Willow in the family chauffeur-driven car every day. To outsiders, I was practically half a member of the Liu family myself. The Liu family was the richest family in the city. Makoto was just another aimless high school troublemaker. How could he possibly dare touch someone connected to the Lius? Besides, I was 6'2", broad-shouldered, and built like an athlete. Makoto was barely 5'7" and skinny enough to get blown away by a strong breeze. Bullies like him all shared the same weakness. They picked on easy targets and avoided anyone stronger. Against someone like me, Makoto would only dare play dirty behind the scenes. He'd never confront me openly. If you hadn't copied me, Willow and I would have already been together. He stubbornly lifted his chin, refusing to back down. To be fair, he wasn't entirely wrong. When Willow first entered her rebellious phase a few months ago, she had been intrigued by Makoto. She had even come close to agreeing to be his girlfriend. That was when I immediately dyed my hair green and rolled up on a motorcycle, hijacking her attention before he could seal the deal. As a result, Willow rejected his confession. To put it bluntly, if this giant green-haired distraction hadn't appeared at exactly the right moment, Makoto might have already talked Willow into sneaking off to some cheap motel with him. I was the one who shattered whatever fantasy she had about him. Willow will be mine sooner or later. I'll win her back. Just wait and see. Makoto threw out one final threat before storming out of the men's restroom with clenched fists. Yeah, right. I zipped up my pants and let out a cold laugh. I was actually curious to see what tricks Makoto would come up with next in his attempt to steal Willow from me. Though honestly, with his limited imagination, his entire playbook probably consisted of acting cool and pretending to be mysterious. After all, Willow was still young, sheltered, and inexperienced. Girls like her were often drawn to people who looked cool. Chapter 2. When I returned to the classroom, I immediately noticed that a few rowdy girls had taken over my seat. For as long as I could remember, Willow Liu and I had shared the same desk. When I was 12, my father suddenly fell gravely ill, and my mother abandoned us without a second thought. Just when I had nowhere left to turn, Mr. Liu appeared like a savior. Not only did he pay for my father's medical treatment, but after my father eventually passed away, he took me into the Liu family and raised me as his own. Willow Liu was Mr. Liu's only daughter. At home, she was adored by everyone and treated like a princess. She lived freely, doing whatever she wanted whenever she wanted. I didn't have that luxury. I knew very well that I was only a child Mr. Liu had taken in out of kindness. So in the Liu household, I always followed his expectations and conducted myself properly. To his credit, Mr. Liu never treated me unfairly. He invested a great deal of effort into my upbringing, teaching me knowledge, business skills, and life lessons. He often took me to important events and introduced me to people far beyond my station. I could vaguely sense that he was grooming me as a future successor of sorts, or at least someone capable of supporting Willow in the future. Mr. Liu traveled constantly for business, sometimes staying away for months at a time. Mrs. Liu had passed away during childbirth. For all these years, aside from the servants and security staff, only Willow and I had been free to come and go within the enormous mansion. From the day I moved into the Liu household, I became Willow's playmate. I was also the person who made her feel safe. Whenever thunderstorms rolled in, she would carry her pillow straight into my room. Whenever she didn't feel like doing homework, She would toss the assignments onto my desk and make me help. Whenever she went out with her friends, she always dragged me along to carry her bags and pay the bills. Between Willow and me, part of our relationship felt like siblings. Part of it felt like a loyal steward serving a spoiled young lady, and the rest felt like childhood sweethearts who had grown up side by side. To me, she was both an untouchable moon high in the sky and an annoyingly familiar little princess I'd known my entire life. Now that same princess had grown bored of ordinary student life and become fascinated by the rebellious lifestyle of troublemakers. That was exactly why Makoto believed this was his chance. A chance to get close to the heiress, maybe even become the Liu family's future son-in-law. What a naive fantasy. Instead of returning to my seat, I walked over to the window and quietly listened to Willow chatting with her group of friends. Some were from our class, some from other classes. Very few of them could be considered model students. Before long, I heard them talking about tattoos. According to them, tattoos were the coolest thing in the world. I thought about it for a moment. After school that evening, I picked Willow up on my motorcycle and took her straight to a tattoo studio. If she wanted to rebel, then I'd indulge her. I went first. I had Willow's name tattooed across my chest, surrounded by an elaborate design that made it look as though I was deeply, hopelessly in love with her. You tattooed my name, so I have to tattoo yours too. Just as expected, Willow immediately assumed I was completely devoted to her. Without hesitation, she decided to have my name tattooed above her chest, paired with a matching design. Just like that, our tattoos became a matching couples set. When we left the studio, she looked at me with sparkling eyes. Her tone carried the casual generosity of a princess handing out a reward. George, I know you like me. You've stayed by my side all these years. You dyed your hair for me. You got a tattoo for me. She lifted her chin proudly. So I'll give you a chance. Be my boyfriend. My transformation had apparently moved her enough that she was willing to grant me the privilege of dating her. Then she stepped closer. Standing on tiptoe, she wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered softly into my ear. Since we're dating now, I'll allow you to kiss me. Girls going through a rebellious phase were naturally curious about things like kissing. Willow was no exception. But the truth was, I didn't really want to kiss her. She was undeniably beautiful. However, her spoiled princess personality and hopeless romantic tendencies were far from my ideal type. Even so, I wrapped an arm around her waist, lowered my head, and kissed her deeply. It was our first kiss. Even when she'd been spending time with Makoto, she had never allowed him to touch her. Whether her first kiss was still hers to give, nobody knew better than I did. That night, Willow posted a photo of our hands intertwined on social media. The caption contained only 4 words: 2 hearts, 1 soul. The picture showed nothing more than our hands, but it was practically an official relationship announcement. The comments exploded almost instantly. Willow, what does this mean? Wait, are you dating someone? Come on, spill it. Who's the guy? Who else could it be? I'll bet $5 it's George. Chapter 3. Back in my bedroom, I scrolled through Willow's social media post and the flood of comments beneath it, unable to stop a smile from creeping onto my face. I had to admit, those girls were pretty good at guessing. The next day, Willow's friends greeted me with an entirely different attitude. Morning, Gio. Congrats on getting together with Willow. Gio finally got his dream girl. You owe us a celebration. That's right. Gio has to treat everyone. We need to celebrate you two getting out of the singles club. One Gio after another rolled off their tongues with surprising ease. I received a generous monthly allowance from the Liu family, so spending a little money wasn't a big deal. Without hesitation, I waved a hand. Fine, dinner's on me tonight. Bring your boyfriends too. Most of their boyfriends were troublemakers from school as well. That evening, I treated everyone to a lavish dinner. Practically every rebellious kid in school showed up. Everyone except Makoto and his 2 loyal sidekicks. Halfway through the meal, I went to the restroom. As I returned and reached the private room, I overheard one of the girls asking Willow, isn't it kind of sudden that you and George got together? Willow answered in her usual lazy, carefree tone. George has been by my side for years. He's crazy about me, so I figured I'd give him what he wanted. She shrugged. Besides, I was bored anyway. I chuckled inwardly. Just as I thought, she still believed I was hopelessly in love with her. After dinner, I put Willow on the back of my motorcycle and led our group of rebellious students through the city streets. These days, money talked, and whoever had money naturally became the leader. In less than 2 weeks, Willow and I had become the undisputed king and queen of this little crowd. Of course, we never bullied anyone. Neither of us was actually a bad student. But Makoto, having been pushed off his self-proclaimed throne as the school's top rebel, finally couldn't sit still anymore. He decided to make his move. Willow, look at my tattoo. During a break between classes, Makoto stopped Willow in the hallway. Rolling up his sleeve, he proudly revealed the letters tattooed on his arm. WL, your initials. He looked at her expectantly, clearly hoping to prove his devotion. Willow glanced at it. Then she frowned. "It's not as nice as mine." Her tone carried a hint of disdain. As she spoke, she casually tugged down her collar. The tattoo beneath was immediately revealed. At the center of an intricate design was a single name, George. The sight struck Makoto like a knife to the heart. There was no mistaking the meaning behind tattooing another person's name on your body. Makoto's eye twitched. He had been dealt another devastating blow. He genuinely hadn't expected things to progress so quickly between Willow and me. They had already reached the point of tattooing each other's names. Ignoring Makoto's dark expression completely, Willow adjusted her collar and covered the tattoo again. Then she proudly declared, "George has my name tattooed on him too. Isn't that cool?" Stab. It was as though Makoto had taken another hit straight to the chest. Not only had we tattooed each other's names, we had done it for each other. Meanwhile, he only dared tattoo a pair of initials. Who looked more serious? Who looked more devoted? The answer was obvious. Makoto's face turned bright red. At that moment, he looked like the world's most pathetic clown, embarrassed by his own wishful thinking. But he still refused to give up. After all, Willow Liu was the only daughter of the Liu family. One day, the Liu family's vast fortune would belong to her. Getting close to Willow, becoming her boyfriend, marrying into the Liu family. Those were the only opportunities Makoto would ever have to change his fate. Winning Willow over was, in his eyes, the only path to wealth and success he would ever get. The tattoo stunt had failed to earn her affection. A few days later, Makoto came up with a new plan. Chapter 4. After lunch, a group of rebellious students gathered in the hallway, fooling around as usual. Willow was among them. Seizing the opportunity, Makoto had one of his buddies play music from a phone while he stepped into the center of the hallway and started breakdancing. After several days of intense practice, his moves had actually become pretty decent. The energetic music combined with his flashy performance quickly attracted the attention of nearby students. Some even pulled out their phones to record. It was obvious what Makoto was doing. This was a peacock showing off its feathers. The entire performance was designed to capture Willow's attention. And to be fair, it worked. Willow's eyes immediately lit up as she watched him. When Makoto finished, she was the first to applaud, cheering louder than anyone else. At that moment, Makoto felt all those days of practice had finally paid off. In his mind, the performance had been a huge success. He proudly raised an eyebrow and shot me a smug look, as if he'd already stolen Willow back. Unfortunately for him, what happened next shattered that illusion completely. My turn. Inspired by Makoto's dance, Willow suddenly wanted to perform too. She shot me a look. I immediately understood and pulled out my phone, putting on an upbeat dance track. With the music playing, Willow began dancing to the rhythm. Her school uniform had been tailored to fit perfectly, accentuating her graceful figure as she moved. Every step radiated youthful energy. Willow was already beautiful. With the dance, she became impossible to ignore. Not only were the boys staring, even the girls couldn't take their eyes off her. Watching Willow dance by herself didn't bother Makoto much. In fact, he secretly felt pleased. After all, they both liked dancing. Surely that gave them something in common. Surely it would bring them closer. Then I stepped forward and joined her. The smile instantly vanished from Makoto's face. Willow and I moved in perfect synchronization. Every step, every turn, every beat. It was obvious we'd practiced together countless times before. To everyone watching, we looked like the perfect couple, a match made in heaven. When the music ended, applause erupted throughout the hallway. Willow and I turned toward each other at the exact same moment and exchanged a perfectly timed high five. Watching the scene unfold, Makoto nearly lost his mind. He had spent days training for that performance, hoping it would be his comeback moment. Instead, it had become little more than the opening act for Willow and me to show off our chemistry. His fists clenched so tightly his nails nearly dug into his palms. The glare he shot me felt sharp enough to cut flesh. If looks could kill, I'd have died 10 times over already. After that, things remained quiet for several days. But despite one setback after another, Makoto refused to give up. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Willow, several of her girlfriends, and I were walking through an alley when a group of street thugs blocked our path. There were 7 or 8 of them. Leading the group was a stocky man with a bowl cut. His loose flesh hung from his frame, and everything about him screamed trouble. Well, damn. His eyes immediately locked onto Willow. What a gorgeous little thing. He stepped closer, grinning shamelessly. Come home with your big brother here, sweetheart. I'll make sure you're treated real nice. As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together, looking thoroughly disgusting. The girls around Willow were already trembling with fear. None of them dared make a sound. Willow, however, remained surprisingly calm. She immediately pulled out her phone, intending to call for help. Before she could unlock the screen, the bowl-cut thug suddenly lunged forward and slapped the phone out of her hand. The device crashed onto the ground, Heh, trying to call someone? No chance. The thug sneered and swept his gaze across all the girls. His tone grew even more arrogant. Today, every one of you is staying with us. Make us happy, and we'll make sure you've got spending money every day. The gang behind him instantly erupted into crude laughter. Their ugly voices echoed through the alley. Willow, what do we do? The girls hurriedly crowded around her, pale-faced and shaking. They might have acted tough around school. They might have played the role of rebellious bad girls, but none of them had ever dealt with real street thugs before. At most, they bullied people within the safety of school grounds. This was completely different. Now they were trapped in a narrow alley, surrounded by genuine criminals. The tension in the air was so thick it was hard to breathe. Chapter 5. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the alley, Makoto was hiding with his two closest followers. All three of them were listening carefully to the commotion inside. Their presence there was no coincidence. Makoto, you're a genius. One of the boys withdrew his gaze and gave him a thumbs up. His voice was full of admiration. We hired Tiger and his crew to corner Willow first. Then the three of us rush in and play heroes. Once we save her, Willow will definitely be impressed by your courage. After that, dumping George and falling for you will only be a matter of time. That's right. The entire setup had been orchestrated by Makoto from the beginning. The gang of street thugs blocking the alley had been hired by him. The plan was simple. Tiger's crew would scare the girls. Then Makoto would charge in at the perfect moment and save the day. The target had always been Willow. I had to admit it. The guy wasn't completely stupid. If everything had gone according to his script, there was a good chance he could have earned Willow's favor. Maybe not enough to make her fall in love immediately, but certainly enough to score some points. Unfortunately for him, he had overlooked one thing. Human nature. What the hell are you doing? Before long, Makoto rushed into the alley with his two lackeys, putting on the grand act of a heroic savior. But what greeted him wasn't the thug's cooperation. It was a solid slap across the face from Bowl Cut. A real slap across the face. Smack. The force nearly knocked him off balance. Get lost. Tiger glared at him impatiently. Don't ruin my chances with the girls. Makoto froze. His cheek burned with pain as he stared at Tiger in disbelief. Frantically, he began winking and signaling at him, desperately trying to remind him to follow the script. Tiger's response was immediate. Smack. A second slap landed, even harder than the first. Then Tiger pointed toward the alley entrance. Scram. If I see you again, you'll regret it. This wasn't remotely how Makoto had imagined things would go. Tiger, you. Lowering his voice, he tried to remind the men. Wasn't the deal that you'd scare them first, and then we'd come in and rescue. Smack. Before he could finish, a third slap exploded across his face. Tiger casually shook out his wrist. Then he grinned. I changed my mind. These girls are pretty hot. We're taking them with us. His smile turned ugly. As for you three, get lost, or we'll cripple you right here. It was obvious what had happened. After seeing Willow and her friends in person, Tiger had decided they were too attractive to simply use in some staged performance. The plan no longer interested him. Now he genuinely wanted the girls for himself. And unlike Makoto, Tiger wasn't even trying to keep his voice down. Everyone in the alley heard every word. In an instant, the truth became clear. These thugs had been brought here by Makoto. The realization spread through the group immediately. Tiger, you can't do this. Makoto finally panicked. You already took my money. The words slipped out before he could stop himself. Thud. One of Tiger's men immediately stepped forward and kicked him to the ground. Makoto crashed onto the pavement. The thug spat at him. Tiger does whatever he wants. If you've got any brains, you'll leave now. Otherwise, you're asking for trouble. Only now did Makoto realize that Tiger's crew had absolutely no intention of honoring their agreement. They had happily taken his money. Now they wanted the girls too. But Makoto also knew exactly who Tiger was. The man was notorious around the area. He had numbers, he had connections, and he had a reputation for violence. Makoto simply wasn't someone who could afford to challenge him. In the end, he didn't dare fight back. Neither did his two followers. The three of them could only lower their heads in humiliation and prepare to leave the alley. Chapter 6. Makoto, what are we supposed to do now? One of his followers trailed behind him, his voice trembling. If Tiger really takes Willow and the others away, they'll be ruined. Sure, they were all classmates who normally fooled around and got into minor trouble. But this was different. Real street criminals were involved now. If those girls were taken away and harmed, the consequences would be unimaginable, and among them was Willow. I don't know. Makoto had completely lost his composure. His face was pale as he spoke. He was terrified of the situation spiraling out of control. At the same time, he was terrified of Tiger's retaliation. For the first time in his life, he had absolutely no idea what to do. Meanwhile, just as Tiger and his men were rubbing their hands together and preparing to drag the girls away, I finally stepped out from behind the crowd. Bang. I didn't waste a single word. I walked straight up to Tiger and drove a vicious kick into his greasy stomach. The force sent him flying backward. He slammed into the wall before collapsing onto the ground. Holy shit, Tiger. The surrounding thugs immediately cried out in shock. Tiger lay on the pavement, foam gathering at the corner of his mouth. With a trembling finger pointed toward me, he stammered. This guy. He's the real deal. Get him. The remaining thugs finally snapped out of their shock. Relying on their numbers, they charged toward me with clenched fists. What they didn't know was that Mr. Liu had spent years carefully training me. He had taught me hand-to-hand combat, self-defense, weapons handling, even skills like flying aircraft, playing piano, and calligraphy. Without exaggeration, if circumstances required it, I could probably qualify for intelligence work. The reason Mr. Liu was comfortable letting Willow run around and enjoy her freedom was simple. He knew I was always there to protect her. Bang, bang, bang. I positioned myself in front of Willow and the girls, alone. I faced the entire group. My punches were fast, precise, merciless. Almost every strike dropped someone instantly. For the first time, I stopped holding back. And for the first time, I revealed my true abilities in front of Willow. I moved through the crowd like a martial arts master, dodging, counterattacking, striking with ruthless efficiency. Within minutes, every thug was lying on the ground, groaning in pain. The girls stared in complete disbelief. It took them several seconds to recover from the shock. Willow, Gio is insanely good at fighting. Seriously, he's like some kind of action movie hero. George is incredible. Even Willow looked stunned. Clearly, she had never expected me to possess this level of skill. But before long, the shock on her face transformed into pride. She lifted her chin and bragged to her friends. Of course he is my boyfriend. Remember, did you really think I'd choose someone ordinary? She folded her arms smugly. When you girls pick boyfriends in the future, you'd better learn from me. At that moment, she looked exactly like someone who had just discovered hidden treasure. In the end, the incident still reached Mr. Liu's ears. Afterward, Tiger and his gang were reportedly dealt with by another group. As for what exactly happened, I didn't know. And honestly, I didn't care. Makoto didn't escape either. Not long afterward, someone cornered him in an alley and broke both of his legs. From that day on, he never returned to school. His 2 loyal followers disappeared as well. Their families packed up overnight and moved away from Orange City, never to be heard from again. Then again, anyone foolish enough to scheme against the daughter of the richest man in the city should have been prepared to face the consequences. As for me, I was about to face Mr. Liu's reckoning for all the absurd things that had happened recently. Chapter 7. George, you've disappointed me more than I can put into words. Inside the study, I knelt on the floor with my shirt off while Mr. Liu stood before me, gripping a rattan cane, his face dark with anger. The reason was simple. During the months he had been away, I had not only dyed my hair green but had also spent my days running around with Willow and a crowd of delinquents. Once Mr. Liu found out, every bit of the blame landed squarely on my shoulders. Look at those ridiculous hairstyles. And spending every day with those troublemakers. I leave home for a while, and the 2 of you practically turn the city upside down. As he listed our crimes, the cane suddenly whipped through the air. Crack! A burning pain exploded across my back. I clenched my teeth and refused to make a sound. Even then, I still defended Willow. It was my idea. I was the one who dragged Willow into all of this. It has nothing to do with her. If someone deserves punishment, it's me. Willow had been standing outside the study the entire time. The moment she heard my words, and the sound of the cane striking flesh, she finally broke. Crying, she shoved the door open and rushed inside. Without hesitation, she dropped to her knees beside me. Dad, it's my fault. I was the one who insisted on hanging out with those people. It has nothing to do with George. If you're going to punish someone, punish me. Crack. Mr. Liu ignored her plea entirely. The cane landed across my back again. Seeing that, Willow immediately threw herself over me, using her own body as a shield. Tears streamed down her face. Dad, I said it's my fault. Stop hitting George. Her makeup was ruined by tears. She looked pitiful enough to break anyone's heart. What she didn't know was that Mr. Liu and I were secretly exchanging glances. This entire scene had been planned long ago. A carefully arranged performance. The cane landed on me, but the pain was meant to land in the princess's heart. The goal was simple. We wanted Willow to realize how far she'd gone and finally abandon her rebellious phase. In fact, I had written the script 2 months earlier, the moment I noticed Willow beginning to rebel. When I first proposed the idea, Mr. Liu had actually called me a genius. After all, he had no idea how to handle his daughter. Watching her drift toward a dangerous crowd was something he could never accept. But if I became part of that world first, and then used myself to pull her back out of it, the situation became entirely different. At the moment, however, 2 strikes clearly weren't enough. Willow was already sobbing uncontrollably. I discreetly shot Mr. Liu a look. Keep going. Push a little harder. Mr. Liu hesitated. A trace of reluctance flashed across his face, but in the end, he steeled himself and raised the cane again. Since Willow was protecting my back now, he aimed for my chest instead. Crack! The cane came down once more. Immediately, Willow shifted positions and used her body to shield my chest as well. Through her tears, she begged, "Dad, we'll change. I promise. We'll focus on our studies. We'll stay away from those people. We won't do it again." Those words were exactly what Mr. Liu and I had been waiting to hear. Ha! Mr. Liu finally tossed the cane aside, letting out a long breath. His tone softened. "Remember those words. If I ever catch either of you going down that road again, a beating will be the least of your problems. I promise." Willow hurriedly nodded. Her voice still shook with sobs. "George and I will never do it again." The very next day, Willow completely transformed. The earrings disappeared. The dramatic curls were replaced with soft, natural waves. Her dyed hair returned to its original black. All the flashy accessories vanished. Every piece of attention-seeking clothing in her closet was thrown away. She even cleaned out my wardrobe while she was at it. As for the green hair that had been tormenting me for months, I finally dyed it back to black. Thank God. Nobody knew how humiliating it had been walking around with bright green hair all this time. Chapter 8. That ridiculous period wasn't completely without benefits. After a video of Willow and me dancing together went mildly viral online, a talent scout actually reached out and invited me to play a delinquent teenager in a TV drama. Seriously? You're the delinquent? Your whole family are delinquents. I was so annoyed at the time that I spent several minutes cursing the guy in my head. Once we dyed our hair back to black and returned to school, we completely cut ties with that crowd and focused on becoming our old selves again. To be honest, grades had never really mattered for Willow. Mr. Liu had planned her future long ago. As long as she didn't do anything reckless, she was guaranteed a life of luxury and wealth. Whether she excelled in school or barely passed her classes made little difference. The one thing she absolutely couldn't do was keep running around with troublemakers. After the college entrance exams, Willow and I left for a university overseas and began our life as international students. To put it bluntly, Willow was the one who needed to study abroad. I was really just there to accompany her. On our very first night overseas, Willow quietly slipped into my room, looking slightly annoyed. She made a request that caught me off guard. She wanted our relationship to become truly intimate. "We've been dating for so long," she complained. "Are you seriously never going to make a move?" Willow had always been straightforward and fearless. She had wanted to take our relationship further for quite some time. But while we were still in China, various expectations and restrictions had held her back from saying it aloud. Once we were abroad, those restraints disappeared. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. From then on, we became a couple in every sense of the word. During the day, we focused on our studies. At night, we enjoyed the private world we shared together. The culture overseas was far more open, and it inevitably influenced us. Every now and then, we'd steal moments for ourselves whenever we found the opportunity. Those 4 years abroad became the sweetest years of our relationship. After returning home, Willow Liu gradually took over the management of the Liu Group. 3 years after our return, we got married. That same year, we welcomed our first child, a son named Jack Liu. Another 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. By then, Willow had fully taken control of the Liu Group and become one of Orange City's most prominent CEOs, overseeing 18 publicly listed companies. But it was also during that year that our marriage quietly began to face its first real crisis. For as long as I could remember, Willow had only hired female assistants. Then one day, I discovered that she had suddenly hired a male assistant. His name was Martin. Fresh out of college, he was the definition of a young heartthrob, with the youthful energy and fresh-faced charm that came with it. The moment I saw him, I sensed trouble. People talk about the 7-year itch in marriage, but Willow and I had known each other and been by each other's side for nearly 20 years. Other than her, I had never dated another woman, and aside from me, she had never truly been close to another man. When you've spent years looking at the same face, while new and exciting people constantly appear around you, very few couples can honestly say they'll never be tempted and never lose sight of their original promises. Chapter 9. Ever since Willow hired Martin as her assistant, she'd become unusually attentive at home, almost as if she were trying too hard. I knew exactly why. Martin had already occupied a place in her heart. For all I knew, whenever she was with me, she was thinking about him instead. Not long afterward, following a business trip she took with Martin, Willow gifted him a watch worth 300,000 yuan. The most ironic part? Martin actually added me on WeChat. Then he posted a photo of the watch on his social media. The caption read, "What makes a female CEO give me a 300,000 yuan watch? Love." There wasn't a single comment beneath the post. My guess? He'd made it visible only to me. Looking at the screen, I couldn't help laughing. I immediately took a screenshot. Who knew when he'd delete it? The moment I saved the evidence, I began packing my luggage. Without a second thought, I left the villa. That evening, Willow came home and found the house empty. I was gone. So were all my belongings. Panic set in immediately. George, where are you? Pick up the phone. Why is all your stuff gone? Did you go back to your hometown? Please answer me. Don't scare me. Our son and I are still waiting for you to come home for dinner. When she couldn't reach me by phone, she started flooding me with messages, one after another. Every word was filled with anxiety and panic. At that moment, however, I was driving an off-road vehicle toward a remote campsite with 2 travel companions. We had just arrived and were setting up tents for the night. Our destination was the Tian Shan Mountains. I had spent nearly 20 years by Willow's side, serving the Liu family, helping her take over the family empire. Yet throughout all those years, she had never noticed something important. From the day we met until the day we married, I had never once told her I loved her. The truth was simple. Everything I had done was out of gratitude toward Mr. Liu. He had saved me when I had nowhere else to go. So I devoted myself to helping his daughter. Before I knew it, nearly 2 decades had passed. If Willow had remained true to herself and to our marriage, I would have gladly spent the rest of my life with her. But she chose otherwise. She chose excitement. She chose temptation. And in doing so, she betrayed our marriage with her own hands. Ironically, her finding someone new felt more like freedom to me than heartbreak. I glanced at her messages. Without saying a word, I sent her the screenshot of Martin's social media post. Instant silence. To be fair, a watch worth 300,000 yuan wasn't particularly impressive compared to the luxury watches sitting in my collection. But what kind of female CEO suddenly gives her young male assistant a gift that expensive? Nobody was stupid. Everyone knew exactly what it looked like. Not long afterward, Willow finally replied. She insisted that she had never physically cheated, so she was admitting the emotional affair instead. Did arguing over degrees of betrayal really matter? I didn't respond. Instead, I looked at the 2 women sitting beside the campfire, happily devouring grilled meat. I smiled. Sophia and Laura had both graduated from college recently. They worked as content creators, beautiful and energetic. They posted dance videos online and had already accumulated millions of followers across social media platforms. On this trip, they were both my travel companions and my employers. I had been hired as their personal photographer. My job was to film content for them. I genuinely enjoyed the work. After all, thanks to the shares Mr. Liu had given me years ago, I had already achieved financial freedom. Money wasn't something I worried about. From tonight onward, I would only do the things I wanted to do. No longer would I let Willow dictate my life. George, come have a drink with us. Sophia raised her glass and called out to me. That night, I got back at Willow. And I didn't just get even, I doubled it. She cheated on me once, while I ended up cheating on her twice. Chapter 10. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and lighter than I had in years. Even breakfast tasted better. What I didn't expect was that by noon, Willow would arrive in dramatic fashion, by helicopter. When she stepped out, she was carrying our 3-year-old son in her arms. Her appearance immediately attracted attention from everyone in the travel group. Holy crap, isn't that Willow Liu, the CEO of the Liu Group? Willow had become a well-known figure over the years, frequently appearing at major business forums. A lot of people recognized her. George, Jack and I both miss you so much. The moment she saw me, Willow played the family card. Daddy, hug. Hearing my son's soft voice, I couldn't bring myself to direct any resentment toward him. I immediately took Jack into my arms. Then I looked at Willow and said reproachfully, Willow, do you really think using Jack like this is appropriate? She grabbed my sleeve tightly. Her eyes were filled with emotion. I just can't live without you by my side. I mean it. I swear. I never physically cheated on you. I had no idea Martin would use that watch to provoke you. I already fired him. Oh, and I got the watch back too. As she spoke, she pulled out the 300,000 yuan watch from her pocket. Apparently worried that I would find it tainted, she immediately threw it onto the ground and stomped on it. Trying to please me, she said. George wouldn't like it anyway. See, I threw it away. The truth, however, was that I didn't care much about Martin anymore. At this point, it was better to be honest with her. Willow, I'll tell you the truth. I don't actually mind if you're with Martin. The moment those words left my mouth, Willow froze. I continued calmly. From the day we started dating until now, I've never truly loved you with all my heart. It wasn't that I had never felt attracted to her, but attraction and love weren't the same thing. What I felt back then was little more than youthful desire. Deep down, you and I have never been the same kind of person. I paused before asking, do you remember Makoto? The name immediately brought back memories of the rebellious boy from high school. I continued, back in our senior year, you stopped being the perfect daughter everyone expected. You became fascinated by people like Makoto. Later, I deliberately turned myself into the kind of person you liked. I forced my way into that story. That's why you and Makoto never ended up together. I smiled faintly. To be blunt, if I hadn't interfered, the two of you would have fallen head over heels for each other. Who knows? You might have driven Dad crazy by now. Before Willow could argue, I went on. You and I were never truly compatible. We just ended up tangled together because of circumstances. I was the one who stepped into your life, and I paid the price for it. I married you. We had Jack. I looked at her quietly. Now you've grown up. You've become mature, and you've found someone you genuinely like. So why can't we simply part ways here? Wouldn't that be better for both of us? Chapter 11. I finally said everything that had been bottled up inside me for years. But instead of accepting it, Willow panicked. She immediately moved closer and clung to me. No, that's not true. You're lying to me, aren't you? You do love me. Her voice trembled with desperation. I don't like Martin. We were just talking. That's all. And I never liked Makoto either. Don't accuse me of that. I know who I've loved all these years. It's always been you, George. She grabbed my arm tightly. Can we stop fighting and just go home? She pleaded with me over and over, but I knew there was no point. Right now, she wasn't listening to anything I said, so I turned around and stopped responding. Unfortunately, Willow wasn't willing to give up. Instead, she simply joined our trip. Since she was still my wife on paper, she squeezed herself into our off-road vehicle without asking. Sophia and Laura had no reason to throw her out. If anything, the two girls looked slightly guilty whenever Willow was around and avoided making eye contact with her. The Liu group already had professional managers handling day-to-day operations, so Willow didn't need to stay at the office constantly. Just like that, she followed us around for an entire week with Jack in her arms. Then Martin decided to make trouble again. After being fired, he went online and publicly accused the CEO of the Liu group of playing with his feelings. He released intimate chat records. He posted ambiguous photos taken during their business trips. Then he started a live stream and exposed everything. For the first time, Willow looked genuinely rattled. I, however, smiled. See, those are all evidence of your affair. I looked at her calmly. When you've dealt with this mess, let's get divorced. Let's do it with some dignity. Don't force me to take legal action. Willow paused before stubbornly replying. But I already told you. It was only emotional. I never slept with him. To be fair, none of the photos or messages actually proved a physical relationship. But that wasn't the point. Betrayal was still betrayal. Even so, she was Jack's mother. Pointing at the photos, I said, look carefully at the angles. These pictures were obviously taken by someone secretly following you. Willow froze. A realization suddenly hit her. You mean, someone set me up? I nodded. When you get back, investigate Martin. I paused. And investigate Makoto too. After leaving those words behind, I started the engine and drove away with Sophia and Laura. Willow needed to return to H-City to deal with the scandal. In the end, she could only step out of the vehicle with Jack and part ways with us. The truth was, I had already figured everything out. Martin had been acting under Makoto's instructions. His entire purpose was to infiltrate the Liu group and seduce Willow Liu. Originally, I had planned to expose the scheme later, but since they had already made the first move, I decided there was no reason to keep the secret any longer. As soon as Willow returned to H-City, she launched an investigation. It didn't take long before she confirmed that Makoto had indeed been pulling the strings behind the scenes. Without hesitation, she held a press conference. In front of countless reporters, she openly admitted to her emotional affair. Then, standing before the cameras, she publicly begged for my forgiveness. After all, I could never forget what Mr. Liu had done for me, and no matter what happened, Willow would always be a little bit like a younger sister in my eyes. Before Mr. Liu could even call me, I posted a statement on social media myself. I explained that Willow and I had been going through a rough patch recently, which had allowed someone with ulterior motives to take advantage of the situation. I publicly stated that I had forgiven Willow for her emotional affair. I also apologized for the incident occupying public attention and trending across social media. The moment my statement was released, Martin's live stream accusations immediately lost momentum. Internet users quickly discovered something important from the chat records that had been made public. Martin had known from the very beginning that Willow was married. He wasn't some innocent victim. He was a willing third party who knowingly inserted himself into someone else's marriage. The more people looked into it, the clearer the situation became. It wasn't that he had been deceived. He simply failed to replace the husband. And after failing, he lashed out and tried to blow up the entire situation. The public wasn't stupid. Before long, countless viewers flooded Martin's live stream with criticism. Within days, he became social media's favorite punching bag. He barely dared show his face in public. Eventually, his live stream account was shut down entirely. Afterward, Mr. Liu stepped in once again. Not long later, both Martin and Makoto disappeared from public view. As for what happened to them, nobody knew. A few more days passed. The scandal gradually faded away. People stopped talking about it. Life moved on. Meanwhile, Willow arrived at our convoy again by helicopter. This time, however, she came prepared. She left Jack in the care of a professional nanny team, and she brought an enormous suitcase with her. Judging by the size of it, she clearly intended to stay for a long time. Then again, Willow had always loved traveling even more than I did. She was constantly chasing excitement, adventure, and new experiences. Standing outside the vehicle, she looked at me with pitiful eyes, like a stray cat waiting to be taken in. "I'm still your wife, so you can't kick me out." A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Then I stepped out of the vehicle. Without saying a word, I picked up her suitcase and loaded it into the back. In front of us stretched the magnificent Tian Shan Mountains. Towering peaks rose beneath the endless sky. And for the four of us, Willow, Sophia, Laura, and me, our story was only just beginning.